Please put your hands together for Jess Niemiec. Woo! Informative speaking.
Hello everyone. My name is Jess Niemiec. I actually originally am from this district. I competed with this district for 4 years for Wilkes University. Then I went to the University of Texas at El Paso and I coached there for the last 3 years before deciding that, hey, I miss autumn. And I came back to this area. So now I'm doing some coaching at Lafayette and enjoying every moment of it. See, John? It's a little plug right there.
Any mention of roller coasters?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because roller coasters should never be demolished, and nor should their photos be placed on discounts. Alright, informative speaking. This event seems like it should be the easiest of all the PA events. Informative speaking. All I have to do is tell people about stuff. Like, how hard is that? It's hard. It is not an easy thing. The first thing, and probably the most important thing when you're doing an informative speech, is topic selection. Because without a good topic, you have absolutely nowhere to go. I actually happened to judge the AFA. This is a description of informative speaking straight off the AFA bylines. So informative speaking, an original, factual speech by the student on a realistic subject to fulfill the general aim to inform the audience. Audiovisual aids may or may not be used to supplement and reinforce the message. Multiple sources should be cited, and maximum of 10 minutes. Minimal notes are permitted. So it's got to be on a real subject. So let's talk a little bit about topic selection. Some of the topics, like I said, that made it to finals last year were universal blood. It was a machine that actually can take blood and make AB negative blood O negative so that it can be used in anyone. It was a pretty cool speech. I think it took a fifth. There was food that, items of food that look like specific body parts actually help those body parts. Like, so carrots, when you cut carrots in half, they look like irises. So, like, they help eyes. I forget what other foods he talked about. He yammered for quite a time. Evolutionary adaptation, which was a social topic. It's about the idea that while human beings biologically are no longer evolving, socially we're continuing to evolve at leaps and bounds. I mean, those are the ones I remember. And you'd think nationals find around, I remember them all, but it's very sad. Either I'm getting worse or they need better topics. Probably. So topic selection. Now the idea behind this, you can't have anything old. If it's in the pop culture media, if it's something that people are talking about, I'm not talking about your lunch table where you come up and say, hey, I just read this, and then your friends start talking about it. If people are talking about it in news, in mainstream media, it's probably not good enough for forensics. You want stuff that's new and that's really interesting and that's very cutting edge. A lot of the trends that we see in pop culture, like this is like an inter trend. But you know how there was like the big religion popping up, like the movies and stuff were all religion based. 3 years before that, forensics was doing a lot of religion based pieces. We're like 3 years ahead of the trend, ahead of the curve. So like once it gets to the popular culture, it's probably too mainstream to be used. Almost anything you would see in like a speech 101 class that you would inform about, probably not going to hold our attention. It's probably something we've heard a decade ago. We're very picky in topic selection for informative. And that's why a lot of informatives are technology based, because technology is constantly evolving and changing, and there's differences occurring all the time. Medical stuff, like a great place to look for some informative topics, medical journals. Like medical journals, not fun to read, but great for topic selection. I mean, tiny little articles in Popular Mechanic, Scientific America, but not the articles that already have a cover and 6 pages. I'm talking about the articles that are a quarter of a page, that are shoved in a corner, and have like 2 or 3 lines that you're like, whoa, I wonder what this could be, and then you go to LexisNexis and discover that it's much more than these 3 or 4 lines. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that we do in informative speaking don't ever come to fruition because they're all still in the, oh, maybe this will happen stage. Like I saw a speech last year on an invisibility cloak. Very cool topic, but how really applicable to everyday life is it, or how realistic is it that I'm going to have an invisibility cloak in the next 10 years? I mean, it'd be cool, but probably not going to happen. Unfortunately, informative speaking has kind of gone that way because we're so concerned in this activity with finding stuff that's new that we haven't heard about. That's the way you're going. The trend is kind of actually like new social phenomena are kind of being picked up, like psychological stuff. Like the thing I said about the evolutionary adaptation, how we're not evolving biologically, but we are socially. Stuff like that. Like I saw a great speech on. They found that a lot of animals have homosexual tendencies, and the argument within that speech was if it's happening with animals and not human beings, then obviously the human being tendency to do this is something that's also natural. Things like that. Like these are the types of topics that are kind of coming out of the woodwork now because I think we're getting so inundated with technological topics that we're looking for some more stuff. I mean, still 4 out of 6 speeches in every round are going to be technology based, and 3 out of those 4 are going to be a new medical breakthrough. So don't be afraid to use those topics. But if you can find a topic that's not technology or medically based, that's probably a better topic to use. To be a little bit different, to really teach us something. Because if I learn about 6 different medical breakthroughs in one round, I'm an idiot. And I'm a nerd. So that's nice. So once you have your topic selection, you talk to your coaches, you get it approved. Next step is research.
Hooray.
Yay, research. I mean, you need a minimum for your initial researching, you should get a good 8 to 10 sources right off the get-go. Boom. Before you even start writing your speech. And once your speech is written, or once you have your 8 to 10 sources, you should bring it back, start outlining, start figuring out where these sources plug in. And then when you're outlining, when you're plugging in holes, you'll know more questions to search for, more search criteria. A good speech, I tell my students, for an informative, should have a minimum of 12 sources. A excellent speech, like a national level, 14 to 18 sources. I judged informative finals last year. I saw a speech with 22 different sources in it. I was amazed. Now that's a little too much. I think that's a little too source heavy. But you want a good, like 14 to 18, I think is an excellent number to shoot for. And that means that source is going to be well cited, well documented, and your judges are not going to be able to question the validity of it. Because if you have 16 sports sources in a 9.5-minute speech, I mean, you're doing top dollar, top something on the top. Okay. So within this certification, like I said, 14 to 16, I missed it. So 14 to 18 sources. You want to have at least 2 in the intro. Like right from the get-go, put 2 to 3, boom, right there. Look at me, first 45 seconds. This is how credible I am. I have all these sources. LexisNexis, I'm sure all your schools have LexisNexis, is a freaking amazing source for speech writing. Because you type in these things, LexisNexis, you can type it in, it'll